I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Thank you for being here. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yes. Second.
All in favor of approving the agenda, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we have approved the agenda. Tonight's equity statement reading will be by Jean Snodgrass.
Columbia Public Schools, through action and in partnership with families and community, will uphold the values, policies, and practices that promote cultural competence. We will accept, embrace, and empower students and staff in their individual identities to establish and sustain human dignity, justice, and equitable treatment and inclusiveness in the classroom and workplace.
Thank you, Mrs. Snodgrass. And we have some exciting special recognition tonight. First, we are recognizing Danielle Lamb, and our Director of Nursing, Jennifer Maddox, will do the honors.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. We are here tonight to recognize an amazing nurse, Danielle Lamb. Before I officially recognize her, I want to tell you a little background about what she is being recognized for. This is some information on nursing certification and more specifically, the National School Nurse Certification. Nursing certification highlights a nurse's expertise in their specific field. It provides evidence of a nurse's knowledge, professionalism, and commitment to furthering their nursing practice. School nurse certification specifically requires expert knowledge in health appraisal, nursing management, health promotion, disease prevention, and special health issues for students age 3 to age 21. To achieve this certification in school nursing, a nurse must have a bachelor's degree or higher in nursing, be a licensed registered nurse, have worked at least 1,000 hours as a school nurse. Danielle has worked over 10,000 since 2017. And pass the national exam for school nurses, which has a 73% pass rate. And then to maintain this certification every 5 years, it requires the continued practice of school nursing and completing continuing education. It is my honor to recognize Danielle Lamb, Rockbridge High School nurse, for obtaining the national certification in school nurse distinction. Congratulations, Danielle.
And I'd like to now invite Dr. Beth Winton up to introduce some outstanding students.
Sorry, we have a lot of outstanding students to recognize tonight, so a little organization. First up, I'm Dr. Beth Winton. I'm the Director of CPS Online and the former now Secondary EEE Coordinator, and it is my honor to recognize some of our outstanding CPS students. First off, the Hickman High School Ethics Bowl team. Congratulations to the Hickman High School Ethics Bowl team for becoming the National High School Ethics Bowl champions for 2024. The National High School Ethics Bowl is a collective competition that aims to get students across the nation to ponder and discuss the pressing moral issues of our time. These students took a look at a set of 16 cases that outline a wide range of ethical questions that many of us would be intimidated to tackle. This year alone, they looked at our obligations to the deceased, the medical practice of xenotransplantation, and the government's responsibilities to protecting democracy and informing its people, among many other issues. The Hickman team spent months discussing and preparing these cases, winning a regional competition and a single elimination divisional round in order to qualify for the national competition. In the span of a little over a month, these students met nearly every day to familiarize themselves with a set of 15 new cases to discuss at nationals. After winning 3 of their 4 preliminary rounds, they advanced to the single elimination round, going on to win the quarterfinals, semifinals, and the final round, in which they presented their ideas in front of hundreds of spectators, both in person and online. Their coaches cannot overstate how much courage and collaboration it takes for this group to be successful at that level of competition. And in addition to their unwavering commitment to the study of what is right and wrong, and most importantly, the why. So the national championship team, not all of whom were able to join us, but I will read all their names. If you are here when I read your name, please raise your hand. Alex Fajan, Clementine Bueller, Surya Ragu, Atticus Radcliffe, Bailey Moore, Carly Christensen, and Lorelei Harden. Their coaches are Lou Kraxberger and Triple E teacher at Hickman, Casey Dockraden. Please join me in congratulating them. Sorry, we still needed Alex.
So sorry.
Don't be sorry. Okay, I'm back. Again, we have some fabulous students in Columbia Public Schools, so my next honor is to introduce our National Merit Scholarship finalists. The National Merit Scholarship Program is an annual academic competition for recognition in college scholarships that began in 1955. The United States high school students enter the National Merit Scholarship Program by taking the CPS-TV, which is the qualifying test, and serves as the initial screening for the 1.3 million students who enter each year. More than 16,000 of the highest scorers, which represents less than 1% of the nation's graduating seniors, will even qualify as semifinalists, and fewer than those will go on to be National Merit finalists. The selection process involves evaluating substantial amounts of information about the finalists obtained from both students and their high schools, including the student's academic record, course load, difficulty level, depth and breadth of subject studied, and their grades, their PSAT scores, their student's written essay, and demonstrated leadership and contributions to the school and community activities, and finally, a school official's written recommendation and characterization of the finalist. This year, 9 CPS students have earned the status of National Merit finalist. Some of them are able to join us. I'm going to name them all, but when I call your name, please raise your hand. I had this all ready to go, too. Okay. From Hickman, Alex Fajan, Zakvik Kanan, Gus Lookenbill, and Charlotte Struckhoff. And from Rockbridge, Rebecca Buckley, Paris Fang, Shubha Gautam, Donovan Kim, and Julia Kim. Please join me in congratulating our National Merit finalists.
Man, I wish we had a disco ball in here to have spin around, and we have such great awards to present. Our next set of awards is going to be presented by our athletics director, David Egan.
Good evening. On May 24th and 25th, the 2023-24 year in athletics for Columbia Public Schools came to a spectacular finish at the State Track and Field Championships in Jefferson City. 6 individual state championships across the 3 Columbia Comprehensive High Schools was achieved. 2 of the state championships were won by athletes from Battle High School. Both of these athletes are presently out of the country, and so we will look forward to celebrating them at a future board meeting. I also just received word that unfortunately our Rockbridge athlete will be unable to be here tonight, and so we will try to recognize him at a future board meeting as well. But here tonight, representing 3 state championships earned, are our athletes from Hickman High School. And so at this time, I'd like to ask head coach Stuart Johnson, athletes Addison Throckmorton, Zach Wright, Langston Thomas, Marcus Johnson, and John Moss to come forward along with Hickman assistant principal Jen Kane, who will present on their accomplishments tonight.
Good evening. As Mr. Egan said, I'm Jennifer Kane. I'm one of the proud assistant principals at Hickman High School. It is with immense pride and joy that I stand before you today to present our two individual state champions and our state champion relay team from the Hickman High School track and field team. First, we have Addison Throckmorton, who cannot be with us this evening. She won the state championship in javelin and broke the Hickman school record with a throw of 48.98 meters, which is 160 feet and 9 inches. Next, we have Langston Thomas. He won the state championship in the 100 meters and broke the Hickman school record, the Misha state meet record, and an all-time state record with a time of 10.32 seconds. And our relay team, Zach Wright, John Moss, Marcus Johnson, and Langston Thomas won the state championship in the 4x100 meter relay and set a Hickman school record with a time of 41.51 seconds. In a remarkable display of talent, determination, and skill, these students faced off against the top competitors across the state, and their victories not only showcased their remarkable athleticism, but also their poise under pressure and unwavering commitment to excellence. Congratulations to Addison, Langston, Zach, John, and Marcus, and the entire Hickman track and field team for their historic accomplishments. We are proud of your accomplishments and proud to call you Cupies.
I'm going to hijack the microphone from you guys again because our Rockbridge athlete did just make it here. So Maui, if you want to come forward. Rockbridge Athletic Director Michael McGinney is currently on vacation, but he provided me with some remarks on behalf of Maui. So Maui is an incredible story of focus and determination. Maui just began pole vaulting for the first time about 14 months ago. Since then, he has spent many hours on his own, learning and improving the techniques and skills to be successful in the event. His tireless work ethic and dedication to improvement pushed him to win the state championship in the Class 5 pole vault, going for a height of 15 feet 5 inches at the 2024 Misha State Championships. Further, the points earned for the team through his performance allowed the Rockbridge boys team to place third overall in the state. Congratulations to state pole vault champion Maui Danford of Rockbridge High School.
And last but not least, we have Dr. Holtz, who will recognize our substitute of the month.
Good evening. The administration is pleased to recognize two EduStaff substitutes as substitutes of the month. Substitutes are nominated by CPS employees. First, I want to recognize Cynthia Kilfoyle. She was unable to attend tonight, but Cynthia joined EduStaff in 2022, ready to continue serving the Columbia Public Schools. As a retired teacher that had prior experience leading our scholars, we could not be more thrilled to honor her for the extensive impact she has had throughout the district and more specifically at Parkade Elementary.
Cynthia's held multiple long-term assignments, and each time our fellow educators sing her praises. She received numerous nominations from administration, the media center, the counselors, and various teachers throughout the building. She is patient and hardworking and really loves students, even when it is hard. She is resilient and never gives up on students and helping them be their best. Next, I'd like to honor Jennifer Weston. Jenny joined the EduStaff team in Columbia during the summer of 2020. In a world of uncertainty and unknowns, Jenny started subbing in clerical roles before we even knew when school would be starting that year. In the years since, she has continued to be a rock of stability for many schools throughout the district. Her experience, expertise, and dedicated work ethic are an invaluable resource she has willingly shared with so many schools. She has often filled in where there are clerical vacancies and even helped train new CPS employees. Over and over again, we've heard from schools, "We don't know what we would do without Jenny. She really cares about CPS, their buildings, and their people. She is amazing, and she is an absolute treasure." Congratulations, Jenny. Thank you.
If anyone out there is interested in being a sub, please see Dr. Holtz. At this time, we'll have public comment. We only have one public commenter tonight, so I'll read an abbreviated script. We just ask that there not be any derogatory comments, and we ask the audience to remain quiet during public comment. If you did not register in advance, but you still have something you would like to say, you can fill out a comment form and put it in the blue box back there, or you can send the board an email, and this month's board responder is Ms. Snodgrass. We have Elia Bennett tonight giving general public comment. And you will have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Elia. I'm a student in the Columbia Public School District, and I'll be attending Battle as a freshman next year. Today I'm talking about Black student achievement. Black student achievement to me is Black students excelling and advancing in academics and thriving in society as intelligent, productive individuals. We have students in the Black population who are advancing and some who are not. Compared to white students, Black student achievement lags. The Black student body has continued to fall behind in academics. According to Boone Indicators Dashboard, in Columbia Public Schools, Black students are almost 4 times less likely to score proficient or advanced on the assessment compared to white students. In Columbia Public Schools, Black students graduate at a rate of 10% lower than white students. Today I have 2 questions for the board. The first question is, what measures can we put in place to help the Black population succeed in academics? As an 8th grade student, I was enrolled in honors classes. As I transition to high school, I'll continue in honors classes. What I noticed as a student who is advancing academically in the Black population is we don't get much assistance or help because we are deemed smart and have it together. It's not taken into consideration all the things we have to balance as a student. I sometimes volunteer at a daycare, and when I'm in the infant room, there's a crying baby. I notice how all the teachers flock to the crying baby. They're checking their diapers, rocking, and holding the baby. I also notice how the baby who doesn't cry is on the floor laughing and playing. The baby who isn't crying reminds me of the student who is succeeding. Just because they're not crying doesn't mean we don't need to be held or checked on. My second question is, how can we help students in the Black population who are succeeding keep succeeding? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bennett. We have one item tonight under the board president's report, and that is an update on on a recent listening session. Ms. Frau, do you want to go ahead and give that update?
Yes. Last month, we announced that the board was going to start having listening sessions. The plan is to do those 4 times a year. We held our first one on May 29th at John Mr. Lyman, Mr. Harper, and myself were in attendance. We held it at Battle High School. We were so pleasantly surprised. We had, and while it doesn't sound like a lot, it was more than I expected. We had at least 17 individuals come to speak with us. These were grandparents, parents, employees of CPS, and a couple of phenomenal students who gave us a run for their money with the topics that they wanted to talk about. They were very critical thinkers, very articulate, had excellent questions. And there was also a variety of topics discussed, such as, of course, boundaries. But there was also discussions regarding the new cell phone policy, busing for special education students, a variety of items. And it was really great to have great engaged community feedback. The next ones are targeted for either the last week of August, the first week of September, and as soon as we have that date and location solidified, we will start publishing it more widely to make sure that we reach out to as many community members as we can, because we want them to be able to come and share with us what's on their mind about what's going on in CPS.
Thanks, Ms. Burrow. And just as a reminder, the public is always welcome to send an email to the entire board all at once, and you will get a response from our designated responder for that month. And you can also reach out to individual board members for individual meetings at any time. I think we are all pretty accommodating in that way, but I think the listening session is awesome to be able to do it like in a more streamlined, focused, like concentrated way. So thanks for the idea and for putting it together, Ms. Burrow. We're going to skip the reports from our teachers' associations this month. They usually get the summer off. They are actually all here observing, so that feels a little weird, but hi. So we'll hear from you guys in August. So we will jump right into the report of the superintendent, starting with our attendance area process timeline update with Mr. Ofield and hopefully Mr. Gooch, because it's his last meeting, y'all. He looks happy to sit it out. And of course,
Are you
our
sure?
consultant, Karen Jackson.
Mr. Gooch, are you sure? Okay, all right. Good evening. All right, so I'm going to invite Karen Jackson up from Woodport Consulting to walk us through the new options that we'll present to you and also go over the timeline for our new boundary areas. So Karen, it's all you.
So I just checked the board docs and I think it's my other presentation on here, so give me just a second. Yeah, it is. Do you mind if I load a new one? All the same information, just abbreviated. And if you don't have it already, we'll certainly provide it. All right. So it's great to be back. Like I said, this presentation is just an abbreviated version. We're not going to go through all the background data and all of the metrics about the initial options because those no longer exist. So tonight, what we're going to be going through are the final options as well as the exemption scenarios. So allowing some students, the possibility of some students remaining at their current school for a year or two. As usual, this is our overall process. Right now, we are kind of back in the community engagement portion of this process. So what we did is we took all that feedback the last time, we reviewed all of it. I mean, we had thousands of comments. We got awesome feedback. And that really allowed us to make these final options and use them to use the feedback to draw the final options and really make something that we think the community can stand behind. This is the remaining process timeline. On the left, we have our phasing. We've been over this a couple times. We have phase 1 and 2 implemented in 25-26. Phase 3 is going to be implemented in 26-27. On June 5th, the Long Range Planning Committee was presented with the final options. It's the same presentation that is on the project website as well, if you haven't looked at that, or if any community members are interested. Tonight, we're going to be going through those final options as well as those exemption scenarios. On the 11th, so tomorrow, we'll have 2 different meetings in here, one from 11 to 1, I believe, and another from 5 to 7. And we'll be here to answer questions, hear feedback. We'll also have options packets, those big maps, just like we had during our last open house sessions. And then on Friday, the 14th, that is when our feedback survey closes at 5:30 p.m. So if you plan to respond, please do so before then. And then next month, we are hoping to get a board vote, so that is on the 8th during your regularly scheduled meeting. These are the attendance area change guidelines. I'm not going to go through each of these, but just as a reminder, I like to have these in the slide deck just so everyone can see what we're working with here. So moving on to our initial options. And just to make sure, you can see this on your screens, right? What I'm sharing. Okay, awesome. So these are our initial 5 options. Like I said, I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty with all of these. We have kind of moved past them. So these are all 5 of them. And then this is our level of support for each option. As you can tell, option 4 got the highest level of support with over 50%. The rest, you can see anything in blue is support, anything in red is a do not support. So moving on to our final options here. There's 4 of them, and there's 2 options, each with kind of an offshoot from the option, which I'll kind of go through. The A options do not move the high school attendance areas. There are no changes to high school. The B options do. So option A1, like I said, does not move any high school attendance areas. We are pretty much down to minimal changes for the elementary and middle. Something I would like to note at the middle school level, because we are not changing high school attendance areas and maintaining those 100% feeders from middle to high school, the Southwest corridor is tighter than we showed in any of the original 5 options. That is just due to those 100% feeders. That's a highly utilized section of town, and so the middle schools kind of directly translates to that. This slide shows our change area maps on the left. If you want a bigger version of this, there's an options packet on the project website that has all the change areas, and they're a little bit easier to see. Along with this, you can see our feeders currently at the elementary level. I believe there's 11 different feeder splits. We are reducing that to 6 in this, and there are no 3-way feeder splits. There's 2 schools that currently have 3-way feeder splits. Those go away. And then again, like I said, we are doing 100% feeders from middle to high school. Students moved are greatly reduced, mostly because we're not moving high school in these options. And at the middle school level, this is lower than anything that was presented in the past. And then you can see the percentage of students that attend close to the closest school. Keep in mind, we can't have everybody attend their geographically closest school, so these are pretty good given where the schools are located. So, exemption scenarios. There's kind of a lot to go through with these, so bear with me here. We have 4 different scenarios. The first one is showing 5th, 8th, and 12th graders remaining for their last year at whatever level they're at. The next one is 4th and 5th, 7th and 8th, and 11th and 12th, so 2 years each. The next 2 are those scenarios plus their siblings. Something to note about this, I don't have a family ID or anything like that, so the siblings is based on address. It should be, I would say, 99% accurate, but there could be some situations where we have a non-siblings living together. So looking at the left, so this is going to be 5th, 8th, and 12th graders, you can see it's doable. We're not going to have vast overutilizations anywhere if we just allow 5th, 8th, and 12th graders to remain at the elementary schools across the board for any of the scenarios. We're fine. The middle school, because Gentry is so tight right now, that's really our hotspot for the middle school. So the 5th, 8th, and if we allow 8th graders to stay at the middle school level, that will work out fine. Gentry will still be at 100%, but it's an improvement from 111%. And then moving forward, Gentry would be overutilized if we allow that. Something to keep in mind with these is we can kind of mix and match them. So you could say, let's do 4th and 5th graders, 8th, and then 11th and 12th, or something like that. They don't have to be all in one. Just look at those specific sections. So moving on to A2, like I said, A1 and A2, they do not touch the high school attendance areas. A2 was created because we got some mixed feedback from a specific area, the Cascades, that currently attends Rockbridge Elementary School. So what we're trying to do with A2 is get very pointed feedback about this. The only difference between A1 and A2 is that Southwest Corridor Elementary Schools. Everything else is the same. So looking at the change areas for A2, like I said, very similar from A1. We do have more feeder splits in A2. That is because in A2, the Cascades stays at, or the Cascades would go to Rockbridge Elementary and then John Warner, because they are pretty close to John Warner. We do maintain the 100% middle to high school feeders in this one as well. And like I said, there's no changes between A1 and A2 at the middle school level. So looking at exemption scenarios for A2, again, at the elementary school level, we're fine. Beulah-Ralph would be tight for a year if we allow 4th and 5th plus siblings to remain, but they're still under 100% in this case. Looking at the middle schools, it's kind of the same idea. With Gentry, they would still be kind of overutilized. It's at the middle school level, it is important to note that Jefferson would take on some of those students, so they may be right at 100% in any of these. And then we're not making changes to the high school, so we can kind of ignore that for these phasing scenarios. All right, so option B1 does move the high school attendance areas. So B options, like I said, they do move the high school attendance areas. In the B options, not to make this more confusing, but the elementary schools attendance areas do not change in the B option. So B1 and B2 elementaries are exactly the same. So looking at B1, like I said, we are making changes at the high school level. This does a shift on the north from Hickman to Battle, and then a shift between Battle and Hickman and Rockbridge. So this slide shows the change areas for B1. Again, there's an options packet on the project website that you can see a lot better. In looking at this one, we do have a pretty good improvement with feeders. Again, we're moving from 11 to about, I think, 6 again in this one. And then we maintain 100% feeders from middle to high school. Here's our exemption scenarios for option B1. Like I said earlier, at the elementary level, we're pretty much fine across the board. We do have space at that level. Looking at the middle schools, it looks like Gentry is in good shape with 5th, 8th, and 12th, or 5th, 8th, and 12th and siblings, but a little bit of overutilization at the others. And then at the high school level, you can look through there and see where we are. I should have mentioned this earlier. All of the exemption scenarios utilize the current year data, and that is because if we start grade advancing, we lose siblings. We can't say that these exact students are going to have siblings in kindergarten next year and siblings the following year. So we are using the current year data so that we can inform those sibling decisions in this. The assumption being we're going to have a similar number of siblings moving forward. And then option B2, again, in this one, the only change between B1 and B2 is with the middle and high school attendance areas. And it's on like the north section near Derby Ridge Elementary. So same thing with this one. Here's the change areas for option B2. The feeders are still improved. We're looking at 6 feeder splits compared to 11 today. And then we maintain those 100% feeders from middle to high school. And then here's our exemption scenarios for option B2. Again, at the elementary level, we're doing just fine regardless of scenario. I would like to point out the New Southwest Elementary School. It's the last one on that list. The more students we allow to stay, the less that building is utilized. So if we allow 4th and 5th plus siblings, we're looking at an opening year of 35% at that building. So that's something to consider too, because we are opening a new building. 35, yes, yeah. So very, yep, my thoughts exactly. So again, this would be a temporary problem, but it would be opened very low utilized. These are assuming that everybody chooses to do that too, which we know isn't going to happen. So 35 is the worst case scenario for this. So as we talk about exemptions, some things that we really need to consider. First of all, transportation. Is it feasible to transport these students to their the schools that they're remaining at and their new schools? Is it feasible? Just something to note, running multiple student assignment plans puts a huge strain on transportation. If we have multiple buses going into the same neighborhood to go to different schools, we're probably going to have to add multiple routes in order to do this. The other thing we have to consider is a cutoff. Any sibling provision, we have to determine a cutoff. It cannot be a forever thing, because then we will be in this exemption period for the next however many years until all of the siblings end up. So should we allow students to remain at their current schools beyond the 1 or 2 year exemption period? What about those future siblings? So again, if we allow a 5th grader that has a current kindergartner sibling, but 3 more down the line, we're going to be running these exemptions for the next 4 years. So that's something to consider with this. There has to be a cutoff. Otherwise, we're going to be running multiple student assignment plans, not indefinitely, but for a very long time. So again, we are going to ask the community for their feedback, and we've already gotten quite a bit of feedback from community members. I think we're up to almost 500 responses on our survey. Like I said earlier, we will have open houses tomorrow in this room, one from 11 to 1 and another from 5 to 7. The online survey is going to be open until June 14th at 5:30 p.m. So please, please, please plan to respond before then if you plan to. And like we said last time, even if you are not impacted, which is the vast majority of the community, consider responding to the survey. We really want this to be a community-wide process and to hear from folks, even if they aren't necessarily impacted by these options. We like to hear good feedback too. If you're happy, I want to hear it. I like seeing those comments in there. Just like with the last round, changes to these options may still be made if we have community feedback to get us there. So keep that in mind. This is an iterative process. Options can change. Usually at this stage, they don't change very much, but they could if we get the feedback for it. And that is all I have. Are there any questions? I know those exemption scenarios are kind of a lot, so if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Sure. If I could first kind of get a sense of which board members are planning to be able to attend the open houses tomorrow. So, like, who's planning to come to the 11 to 1? You know, I am. It's just, first of all, making sure we don't have a quorum.
I'm going to try.
Okay.
The
later one, the 5 to 7. So you're 5 to 7, maybe?
I'll let you know.
And then you're 5 to 7? Okay, so we'll have at least 2 board members at either of them, at each of them.
Excellent.
And then, okay, Ms. Snodgrass, go ahead with your question.
Sorry, I just was wondering, so I can get some clarification. So on the A scenarios, when you say the high school boundaries don't change, they don't change from what the current boundaries are.
Yes.
On the B options, when you say the elementary boundaries don't change, what does that mean?
They don't change between B1 and B2, but they certainly do
But they change.
Yes.
Okay, so that's I feel like a really important
Yeah.
clarification,
No kidding.
just
Yes, it
because just to make sure that
Yes.
that we know.
Yeah. Attendance areas at the elementary
Okay,
level
I
are
just
going to happen.
because I was
need to
like, but
happen.
then we have a map that has hash
Yeah.
marks that says
Yeah.
that the things are changing. So I just wanted to clarify that so that people know what
Yes.
they should be looking at if they're going to be giving comments and stuff, and what to be expecting as they're looking at the maps, and for me too.
Yeah.
So cool. That was actually all I had.
Okay, great.
Mr. Willoughby.
Less of a question, more of a comment for the public to hear. I think one of the biggest things is that you shared with us some data when it comes to any remaining policy for students. I would really encourage folks, when you're giving your feedback, don't think that a remaining policy is going to be there when you're giving your feedback, because we are making this choice on attendance areas separate to any remaining policy, because one of the biggest things, like how you hit on some of the factors that can impact this, is are we going to even have the staff to do the busing that's necessary? So that's just my biggest encouragement to the community. When you're giving your feedback, don't think that there's going to be a remaining policy. Give that feedback based off of there not being one at all.
Yep.
At least that's my opinion.
Yeah.
All right. And you had said if someone likes the elementary boundaries of one option, but not the middle school boundaries, there is space within the survey to indicate support, very
yeah.
supportive for each different level. So
There
in case
is.
anyone out there had that question, I know that was asked of me. All right. I don't see any other questions. Thank you so much for doing
Yeah.
this additional round of maps. And, just so everyone is aware, this was in addition to the scope of work that Karen was originally hired to do. We asked her to tweak the maps based on the initial feedback and then provide another survey opportunity and open house opportunity for the public. And so this is in addition to the original scope of work. And so thank you very much.
Happy to do it.
We'll go right into our special services presentation. And for that, we have Ms. Elise Monsees, our Director of Special Education, and Leanna Vessel, our Assistant Director of Special Services.
Maybe it's right here. Here we go. But what I don't know is how to get it to, where's the view? I'm not seeing that. Oh, fantastic, thank you. Where's that? Perfect. Thank you. Okay, well, as we were introduced, good evening, and I'm Elise Monsees, Director of Special Services.
I'm Leanna Vessel, I'm the Assistant Director.
We're pleased to share an overview of our department with you this evening. So each of you should have the handout of this presentation that we're doing in front of you as it's coming around. And the other handout we're going to address a little bit later in the presentation, so you'll know how that works into our presentation. So, do you want to go ahead? So this presentation will provide some highlights regarding our department scope, our student achievement and departmental focus over the past 7 years, and our annual Big Rocks. We do request that if you have questions throughout the presentation, if you would just jot them down, and we're happy to answer them at the end or at the conclusion of our presentation. We just want to be sure we get through all the slides in a timely manner. Okay, so this first slide shares our department vision, mission, and values. So our vision is to prepare our students with disabilities to be valued and contributing members of our community. Our mission, or our why, is to individualize the instruction and supports necessary for students in special education to reach their educational goals. And then our values, as you'll notice, are the same as our CPS values of trust, integrity, transparency, collaboration, empathy, and grace. So this slide really tells you who we are. So all positions within our department are listed on this slide. While I'm not going to review every one of the positions, I would like to just point out a couple of them. So as you will see, we have 165 learning specialists, and we have over 200 paraprofessionals. By far, these two groups are the largest in our department. Additionally, as you'll see on the left, the total number of staff in our K-12 department are 551 individuals. That is 16% of CPS's total workforce. Also noted on this slide, our department serves over 2,200 students with IEPs. This includes 125 students who are parentally placed in private school or are homeschooled. So while they are not necessarily attending one of our public schools, we are still responsible for their evaluations, for potentially them having services through a service plan. And then over 850 students with 504s. This equates to 3,100 students, or 17% of all students in CPS are served by our department. So the next slide is similar to the previous slide and summarizes the staff in early childhood special education, or ECSE. While ECSE was not within our department last year, prior to the 23-24 school year, the ECSE director did report to me.
We felt that it was important to give a picture of CPS special services from pre-K through 12th grade. You will see ECSE has many similar positions to K-12, and their largest groups include their learning specialists and their IAs and or paras. There are 99 ECSE staff. When all K-12 and ECSE staff are added together, we make up over 19% of the CPS workforce. That is nearly 1 in 5 staff in our district are a part of the special education department in some capacity. Additionally, this shows that there are, for the 24-25 school year, there will be 274 students with IEPs in our ECSE program. As the year continues along and students turn 3 and are eligible for services under ECSE, then they will be added to that number. This next slide just shares where do we serve students with disabilities. So obviously we provide services in all of our 21 elementary schools, 7 middle schools, and 4 high schools. We also provide services in our 2 public separate day placements, which is our Rosetta and our Quest building. 2 private day placements for our students with intensive behavior needs. We provide services at 1 residential facility, at JJC, and also a number of homebound sites. So this slide highlights our specialized programs. The names of the programs and their locations within our district are all listed in our elementary, middle, and high schools. CPS is really lucky to have so many specialized programs to serve our students with unique needs. There are families who move to Columbia in hopes of accessing one of these specialized programs because their current districts do not have these similar opportunities. Currently, we have over 40 specialized classrooms in addition to our public day programs at Rosetta and Bethel. Now I'm going to turn the middle portion of our presentation over to Leanna.
You go on this side. Okay. Oh, this is not the right one.
Uh-oh. Okay, so your handout should be correct, but so we're going to speak to that slide.
Okay. I think you have an additional slide that has to do with the New Solutions K-12 Opportunity Review. So as we move into the next section of our presentation, we would like to highlight our departmental focus and student achievement since Elise and I took our positions 7 years ago. Before we do, we would like to make note of the New Solutions K-12 Opportunity Review findings, which came out in the summer of 2022. As you may recall, the goals of this project were to develop an understanding of current practices related to special education and support all students who struggle. The report was actually more about all students who struggle versus specifically those just with special education. The goal was also to explore alignment of current practice with best practices for teaching and learning, social emotional learning, addressing learning loss, behavior, staff work life, and sustainability, and also to identify opportunities to refine and improve practices to create sustained change in schools and classrooms, help raise the achievement of students, and improve work-life balance for teachers and staff. So the next slide, and also the one that is currently here, the key components of the study related to special services and student achievement were really around increased focus on core instruction and rigor, provide additional support for classroom teachers to address behavioral challenges, and to create role clarity and increase teamwork. You'll find these targets highlighted in 3 colors as we wanted to depict in the next 2 slides, where these goals have been addressed within our tenure, and the work started far before the summary came out in 2022. Each target is highlighted in a different color, and as we move through the next 2 slides, we've color-coded them to show work towards each of these target areas. So the next 2 slides really show Elise and our work over the last 7 years. Elise and I began in our positions in the summer of 2017. As you can see by the first column, there had been extensive turnover in the last 20 years within our departmental leadership, and Elise and I have been the longest serving in these positions since that time. In reviewing through the organizational structure within this time frame, there was generally a third position. Typically, these positions were titled director, assistant director, and supervisor, although in 15-16, the title changed to executive director, director, and supervisor. The executive director held the position for 1 year before moving into another position. And then from 2016-17 school year to current, there have been 2 administrative positions which have held the title of director and assistant director. Neither Elise nor I were expecting to take our current positions in 17-18. The director at the time stepped down with little notice. The first year was really focused on getting our bearings, learning how to submit hiring forms, change forms, completing reference checks. As Elise mentioned, we have over 500 faculty and staff within our department, and we manage all internal human resource documents for these individuals. We spent a lot of time that first year talking to teachers and coordinators to identify our goals. While this timeline highlights specific tasks initiated and or completed during each of the past 6 years, we want to focus our attention on the areas highlighted in yellow, as we believe these to be the greatest contributing factors to increasing student achievement. Our work really began in the 18-19 school year. We hired an instructional mentor for our department. We knew we wanted to provide more support for our teachers related to instruction, and we were incredibly fortunate to hire an outstanding specialist, Katie Fry, who now serves as our K-12 Curriculum and Instruction Coordinator for Special Services. Not only is Katie incredibly knowledgeable in curriculum and instruction, but she understood all students should be Tier 1 first, and the district should have high expectations for all learners. Katie was instrumental in working to create a strong relationship with our C&I department. Prior, we often operated as separate entities, specific to what we taught and how we taught it. Both departments have greatly benefited from this collaboration. Additionally, during the 18-19 school year, we wanted to analyze how our student achievement compared with other districts in the state. We learned our district maintained a dashboard comparing CPS to 16 other comparable districts. While CPS as a whole generally fell in the middle, our students with IEPs did not fare as well. That was obviously very alarming to us. And we knew we had excellent teachers who worked tirelessly to support students. So we really wanted to know what was going on. While we knew it was difficult to find true comparable districts to CPS, we contacted 3 of the top performing districts, Blue Springs, Fort Zumwalt, and Francis Howell, and set up visits and Zoom calls with their special education leadership teams. From these conversations, it became overwhelmingly clear our primary issue was our students with IEPs were not often given access to Tier 1 grade level instruction, and if our state assessments measure these specific standards, it was obvious why our students were not performing as well as other districts. So over the course of the next 5 years, we've worked to align curriculum and IEP goals to grade level standards, to develop and purchase resources to support students accessing alternative grade level standards, to add additional K-8 instructional mentors to support teachers in their instructional planning and implementation, that had high school lead content teachers to assist with curriculum work and resource adoption. And this past school year, we began working with the elementary building administrators to design building schedules conducive to all students having the opportunity to access Tier 1 and other supports, such as special education, EL, and title services. We would be remiss to talk about curriculum and instructional progress without also mentioning Jamie Kirpash. Jamie has served as one of our specialized program coordinators for the past 10 years. She has worked extensively to create, revise, purchase, and align our curriculum and instructional resources for our students on our alternative grade level standards. She has a master in organization, communication, and professional development. We are proud that our teachers and students in our specialized classrooms have the curricular resources they need to be successful in progressing towards alternative grade level expectations and individualized IEP goals, which was a lot. Moving on into this next section, though, you'll see the green highlight was really when our opportunity review findings came out in the summer of 2022. We were very pleased it supported the work we were already doing, and while we made a few tweaks, we did not feel we needed to change course. You can see the 24-25 column does not have specific task items listed. We utilize our summer months to review progress and departmental feedback to identify new goals for the upcoming school year within our Big Rock areas, which Elise will present at the end. The next session I really like. So you should have a handout with an Excel graph as well as some other supporting documents. Earlier, we made mention in 2018, we began to look at the dashboard on the CPS website, which ranked our district's state assessment scores to 16 other comparable districts. I'm very pleased to present our progress in this area. The graph shows the percentage of students obtaining proficient or advanced state assessment scores in English, math, and science between 2018 and 2023. You'll notice there are not scores from 2020 as students were not assessed due to COVID. The second two columns of the graph reflect CPS as a district in both percentage and district rank comparison, whereas the last two columns depict the performance of our students on IEPs and CPS. I want to draw your attention to the district rank comparison columns. In the last column of the graph, you'll notice every year, in every subject area, our CPS students with IEPs increase in their rankings, except for math, where in 2018 and 2021 we stayed consistent. While we are not satisfied with where we are very proud to have made these gains, especially coming out of COVID. We also believe this shows our current focus is on target, and we need to continue to dive deeper into ensuring access Tier 1 for all and holding high expectations for all learners. Oh boy. The next two slides just provide just that visual you should have in front of you. So just to give you an example, in English in 2018, CPS as a whole ranked 9 of 17 in comparison with other districts, whereas our students with IEPs ranked 13 of 17. By 2023, CPS as a whole was 11 of 17, and we had climbed to 7 of 17.
Okay, these next slides illustrate how Leanna and I support our special services staff. This is somewhat of a share and conquer approach. You will see on my slide that I primarily handle all certified staff-related issues, all legal matters. I meet with coordinators who are over transition, motor services. I meet with our behavior support team. I meet with our site administrators of our Rosetta and our Bethel programs, and also with administrators over our private separate day programs. So then on the next slide, you'll see that Leanna handles most of our non-certified staff. So that would be like our paras and our IAs. She handles those issues. She meets with coordinators who oversee our process and compliance, our speech language coordinator, our curriculum coordinator. She coordinates PD that's offered by our department and oversees ESY services that are provided during Sensations in ESY. So while Leanna and I do divide our areas of focus to help our teams feel supported, we are certainly each able to field most of the questions or concerns regarding any of these specific areas. We feel confident our approach is working, as the finding report from the 2022 Opportunity Review noted that special education staff feel well supported by their leadership. A quote from the report stated, quote, "Special education staff across many roles felt well supported by district special education leadership. They found leadership to be approachable and communicative, meeting with staff regularly and being available to answer their questions. Staff complimented the efforts, capabilities, and knowledge of the district's special education leadership to continuously improve the ways it supports special educators. This is impressive and uncommon in districts the size of Columbia," end quote. So lastly, we'd like to share how Leanna and I prepare for each school year. So in 2018, Leanna and I established our department's big rocks. So those are family, communication, and connections, recruitment, development, and retention, curriculum, instruction, and achievement, and behavior and social emotional learning. Each year, as we set goals for our department, our goals are centered around one of these 4 big rocks. So this slide just illustrates and highlights some of the goals we have accomplished, and we do continue to work on, over the past 6 years. So a couple of the notes I want to make in our family, communication, and connections big rock. It includes our collaboration with SEPTA, or the Special Education PTA, specifically with their president, Molly Myers. Leanna and I meet with SEPTA to share how CPS can support them and vice versa. Many CPS staff have presented at SEPTA meetings, and SEPTA has adopted Rosetta and Bethel to act as their PTA since neither building has a formal PTA. Additionally, we've expanded the Special Services website to include additional information about our department and to offer links to resources and organizations for parents and families. Also, just this year, our process coordinators created informational handouts for parents and families, which gives brief information about the evaluation and IEP process, as some information about these evaluation and IEP process can be overwhelming and cumbersome, so we made it into a handout. Then on to our big rock for recruitment, development, and retention. So in that area, we have further defined our district roles, as was noted in our opportunity review. Additionally, our new teacher orientation is very robust. In August, our new special education staff received specialized training related to their area. Then, during the school year, many of our new teachers attend 8 half-day trainings during the school year with our coordinators to discuss compliance, curriculum, instruction, behavior, and simply surviving their first year of teaching. Our office also distributes a monthly s'more, which provides information about our department. We always highlight a business that we partner with for transition. We highlight 3 staff of our over 500 special education staff and share information about them, such as their years in education, their interests outside of school, and their favorite thing about working with students with disabilities. Another spotlight in the s'more is the CPS Best section. That is a section where staff can give a shout out to their fellow colleagues. This section is always a must read and always very full. Then on to our big rock of curriculum, instruction, and achievement. Leanna extensively covered much of the work that we have done in curriculum, instruction, and achievement. But I do want to highlight a couple of other areas that we have done in this big rock. First, the district purchased Goalbook, which is a nationally used online platform, and it supports teachers to write high quality, measurable, standard-aligned goals and objectives. Additionally, Goalbook provides educators with instructional planning support to be used to help bridge the gap between grade level goals and the student's present level with appropriate, rigorous, and scaffolded instruction. On average, CPS educators access resources in Goalbook 300 times more than the national average. So that exemplifies how much our staff are using this resource. And one of our CPS educators wrote about Goalbook, quote, "The IEP goals I write are more centered on the most impactful standards rather than being randomly chosen. It takes less time to write the IEP because I am not creating everything from scratch," end quote. Additionally, within this section is the expansion of our post-secondary work sites, and that has grown under the direction of Katie Siegel, our transition coordinator. The partnerships with our CPS community businesses to offer work sites for students to learn work skills and vocational skills has been imperative in the success of our students with disabilities transitioning to post-secondary opportunities. Currently, we partner with over 40 community businesses. Lastly, our big rock of behavior, social, and emotional learning. So we offer annual training for our paras and staff related to behavior and how to support students who struggle with their social and emotional learning. Staff learn how to respond to behaviors and build their toolbox with strategies and interventions to help the student work through the behavior, process the behavior, and get back to the learning environment as quickly as possible. Additionally, as recommended through the opportunity review, we have added more board-certified behavior analysis, or BCBAs as they're known, and behavior support staff to help our staff and students who struggle, to help support our staff and to help our students who struggle with their social emotional learning. So as I conclude, we hope this presentation has provided an overview of CPS Special Services. While we have served as the administrators for this department, we could not have made this positive change and significant impact on student achievement without the dedication, perseverance, and commitment of our entire staff, from paras to teachers, to office staff, to related service providers, to our psychs and diags, coordinators, and beyond. This is hard work, and they all rise to the challenge. Well, we had another slide said thank you, and this will answer any questions.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Ms. Snodgrass, go ahead.
It's just really quick. When you talked about where the different locations that are served, one was JJC. What is that?
So that's the Juvenile Justice Center. That's where
Great.
students are incarcerated.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from the board? Mr. Lyman.
Everybody's just looking at each other. So, thank you guys, for what you do. I know, speaking for myself, what did a work session couple weeks ago when we were talking about, having this presentation and everything. And I think Mr. Moore said that you have 450 some odd people in your department, and he was shorting you a little bit.
About 100.
But, which is, I had no idea that the Charles department was that big. So that's awesome that there's that number of people that are committed to this endeavor. Thank you for doing that. I know that this is one of those, special services is one of those departments that doesn't get a lot of notoriety, or the notoriety that it gets isn't the most positive. And I think that's mostly where my question comes from, is there always seems to be a lot of animosity, and there's a lot of things that float around about different things that happen. And I have my own opinion on why that may be, but I was wondering what your thoughts were on why there was such a disconnect maybe between a lot of families and what happens in special services. My thinking there being, or the premise to that being,
Okay.
I'll talk to some folks who are like, I love everything that y'all are doing. My student has an IEP, my student has a 504, my student has this, that, or the other thing, and everything that they're doing is fantastic, and I understand the limitations of what the department can and can't do. And then there's some folks that it ultimately doesn't matter what y'all do, it'll never be enough. And so I was wondering what could be done to help with that, or is there just...
Well, I think that there's always going to be situations where there's been an incident that has occurred that has upset someone. And that might have been that, maybe a family wanted transportation, and they wanted a sibling ride along because the bus that was transporting their student with a special need, they didn't understand why their typically developing student could get on that bus, and we had to say no. So there are things that could be as minor as that have caused them to be upset about something. There are times that I have families that will talk about transportation issues that occurred in elementary school, and the student is now in high school. So I think that there's things that are going to happen that we've typically when it gets to our level, sometimes we obviously have to support what our IEP team, has decided. We will certainly listen, but the IEP team is ultimately the ones that really make the decision. So sometimes just us supporting what our teams have decided.
And then I think that's important to note, that it is a team that goes through this.
Yes.
It includes, the student's family, it
Yes.
includes, the professionals here, et cetera, that it's not just you guys or somebody in your department saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. It is a collaborative effort. So
Correct.
again, thank you for what you guys do.
Yeah, and I want to add, if you don't mind, we're always looking to get better because, no system is truly perfect. We strive for perfection, and that's why we formed the Special Education Committee, where we get to dialogue with our parents or community, with individuals who want to come in and help us get better. We did our survey recently. We surveyed all our special needs parents, got that feedback. We developed a brochure. From there, we have actionable steps and objectives because we know that we want to do better. And, Elise has been there at every meeting. Ms. Vessels have been there at every meeting, taking feedback in dialogue with individuals that are parents and community members and so on. So I think over time, as we do more of, it's kind of like your listening sessions. You all listen and you got input, and that's what we're really striving for is how can we get input to improve where we are. And I think that's going to help with that communication you asked about, Ms. Lyman.
And I would encourage you to, I don't know if you've ever saw the special education survey, but we were actually, while Dr. Yearwood is correct, we always want to improve. We're always looking to make things better. Not that we can please everyone, but the survey actually, we felt really positive about the results. We felt it overwhelmingly supported that what we're doing is good work, that there are areas to tweak. So we welcome that type of public comment.
The board did get a copy of the survey results ahead of this, so that we could look at them, and they were overwhelmingly positive. So that was some good data to be able to see. Mr. Harper.
I'm looking at the numbers you gave us, and it looks like while we're going up compared to these comparison districts, so is the state average, and it looks like we're staying behind the state average in the same way as everything's going up. Can you explain those numbers and why we are behind the state average as we're improving, as you say?
I'm not 100% sure I can speak directly to that question. I know that I can, oops, let me see if I can find it.
Wait, where were we?
Right there, yes. Sorry. When we were looking at this, I do know that as each year, it gets harder and harder to meet that proficiency level and that APR. As far as, where are you seeing state average? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, on that.
Honestly, I've not looked at that for a while, so I could not speak to that. I apologize.
Okay, I'm just looking at the numbers you just handed me, and so it looks like as we're going up compared to everybody else, the state average is staying on that side of us too and going up. So I'm just curious what's going on there.
Yeah.
What, or do we have the right comparison districts given that we're also improving and they're not? So
That's
I'd like, it's a curiosity that I don't know what that data is showing.
Dr. Wilson is a data analyst, and I think he may be able to shed some light, because I think that's a very important question we need to look at. Thank you.
I think you put your finger on it. Our comparison districts aren't rising as fast as the state average is. And so if we're rising a little faster than our comparison districts, but the state as a whole is also rising at the same rate as us, then yeah, that kind of switch would begin to happen. Yeah. And that's, our comparison districts were selected based off of size and overall demographics. And so we have comparison districts that are anywhere from around 11,000 on up. I'm sure there's some that we've missed, but it's not uncommon also for larger districts to not grow as fast. So that makes sense. Okay.
But I also think that whenever it comes to our district in special ed especially, that maybe we should also be looking at local districts too, because people do move across lines if they think one district is doing better than another. So as far as comparison, maybe it's not always fair to compare to the largest districts on the edges of the state when we're also competing like we are with our personnel with both the large districts and the smaller districts close to us.
I think it's fair to say, I think it's hard when you have, we have a lot of students that move to CPS that really require very high-level specialized programming that are also included on our numbers. Some of those are alternative grade level standards and may not be included in this report, but many of them are. So we certainly have our challenges, and we have amazing students and staff that, again, we're not satisfied with where we are, we want to grow. We're just looking at where are we going up or not?
Mr. Willoughby.
Kind of on the same line of data and just kind of probing the brain just to see kind of where y'all's thoughts are. I mean, y'all have been leading the program since 2017, right? And so I was just curious, obviously, when we look at our students with IEPs, at a large scale, we have very low academic scores. But when we dive down even deeper, when we look at our students of color with IEPs, they're also even lower. And so I'm curious from the approach that y'all are taking when you're working with our staff and within special services and across the district as they're engaging with students with IEPs and very specifically our students of color with IEPs, how are y'all thinking about that and that disproportionality that exists between our two student populations with IEPs?
So I think one of the first things is where Leanna addressed that what we realized is our students with disabilities were not even accessing Tier 1 instruction. So that has been the first thing that we're working on now. So that's for any of our students with disabilities. As you know, one of the other things that we addressed this year, as far as our Black students who were OSS was too high, and so there was a big, I don't know if effort is a concentration on what are we doing differently, because sending them home is not working, and so while we did well this year, and we met what we were expecting, or we hoped for. We realized that as we continue into future years, we need to continue to look at that data. We can't just say, okay, well, we're okay now, and we're not going to pay attention to it. So I think that's another aspect of what we're looking at too, is that we got to get them there, and then now we got to keep them in class.
Roger. No, thank you very much.
Ms. Burrell.
I have several. For myself and the people watching at home, can you explain what Tier 1 means?
Tier 1 instruction, so it's the state at every grade level has specific standards laid out for every kindergarten student, and a certain amount of minutes that every student in kindergarten should get in that particular area. So what we were finding was at the elementary level, students, and it not just special education students, it could be title students, it can be students that are, because of discipline, they are not in the classroom when that teacher is presenting the grade level standard. So because of maybe their IEP services, which we think, and I'm not even saying that we may not have this mindset before, that, oh, well, they're a few grade levels behind, so I really need to provide that math work. Well, that's just not the case, and that's not what we found when we spoke to what could be determined our comparable districts. They have students regardless of how far behind, unless they may be in, say, a specialized classroom, that they're in there for Tier 1 fourth grade math instruction, and then there will be additional time set aside that they would be pulled out for their IEP services. So Tier 1 is really that core content. The other thing that we did, which was a lot of the curricular work, was in secondary. Some of our students may have an essential skills English class. Well, the scope and sequence in the curriculum that we had laid out for that was not aligned with the 6th grade English class or the 7th grade math class. So really, we've just done a ton of curricular work and really trying to increase that alignment. Then also the rigor. We can't, I think the study talked about how we have got a really heart for our kids, but a heart is not that high expectation, and we must set high expectations and assume that our students are going to get there and then provide them with supports for that.
And then two things. One, to go to what Blake was saying, I know the curriculum audit said that 31% of our Black students have been identified with special needs. That seems to be twice as much as the national average. Do we know what that current percentage is? And if you don't, you can get back to me. It's fine.
I don't know it off
fine.
the top of my head. But I will say that one of the things that there are a number of things that Dusty reviews, and so they're always looking at is our ratio of students who are identified, is it higher, and are we like in a significant are we significant? Are we borderline? Yeah. So we're always looking at. That information is always coming as well.
And then what does it mean by, on your slide, what does it mean by parentally placed?
Sure. So there are students, we are responsible for child find in our entire district, but there are some families that choose to not send their students to public school. They choose to send them to private school or they homeschool them. However, the student, even though they are not attending public schools, they still have the right to child find. And so if a parent has a student in a private school or they're homeschooling and they suspect that their child has a disability, or maybe the student is at a private school and the teacher there suspects a disability, then that student is referred for an evaluation, and then we go through the process just like we would a student that's in one of our buildings. And if they meet eligibility, then that student, the parent can choose to have an IEP. What wouldn't be an IEP, it would be a service plan, sorry. But so what that would mean is the student might attend OLIS, for example, and then come to one of our schools and get their services through a service plan. So those students, and some families choose not to, but we are still responsible for those 125 students for doing their triennial evaluations. If they have service plans, we are still responsible to do those service plans every year, progress monitoring, all the same things that we would do for, similar to what we would do for a student on one of our campuses.
Okay, yeah, I just didn't understand what that meant. And you mentioned, I'm sorry, I have lots of questions. You mentioned on all the different schools, like our public separate day placements are Rosetta and Quest. What is
Rosetta and the Bethel build? Bethel.
Mm-hmm. I can't keep them all straight. There's so many names. What is our 2 private day placements and what's our residential facility?
So our 2 private are our High Road School, and then KVC also has students that are not just they are there for in a day program, and then the residential program, the residential facility, is KVC. That's where students are placed by the state.
I remember that. And then how many BCBAs do you have now? Because you added.
We currently have 3.
You currently have 3. Do you see an increased need for?
Oh, absolutely. So we actually are partnering. I don't know if the MOU came through this month, maybe. We are partnering with Mizzou and they to grow BCBAs. And so our current 3 BCBAs will take on supervision, which is extensive, and what they do to support upcoming BCBAs. So we are working with Mizzou right now to grow that because yes, I absolutely think that we need more.
Well, and probably there are, I would suspect, more needed in the general nation.
Oh, for sure. Yes.
Just kind of like the shortage of child psychiatrists that we have.
Yes.
And then I think the last question, I'm sorry. You should have just scheduled a meeting. The last question I have is slide 7 is a phenomenal slide, and I know that that's a question that even I have had. In fact, until I saw this slide, I didn't realize the DI classroom and the DASI classroom were 2 separate things. And I don't think any of this is found on the websites. Is there a way to get that information on the website?
That is
something
that is something that we have talked about before. And I think this information would be possible to put. Sometimes we get into struggles whenever we have descriptions of the classrooms, and then there feels like there's kind of a menu. And so a parent may feel very much like, I like that building, that's really close to my house, I want my child to be there. And so that may not be the most appropriate setting for the student. So we walk a real fine line between how much information, and so that we can, obviously think about the student's individual needs.
Right, because it's about the student's individual needs, not how shiny the building is.
Yes.
Yes, I totally get that. And we have curriculum. Do we have curriculum for all the? Okay.
Yes. For those classrooms, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, for the classroom. Yeah, for the classrooms, because I know that we have classrooms, but then we also have lots of students who are in a regular ed classroom that have IEPs or 504s, of course.
We actually did. Since then, we tweaked curriculum a little bit. I don't remember if it was last year. I think we presented to SEPTA about the curriculum in all of our district classrooms. So we do have a PowerPoint that we could share. Again, I think that might need to be tweaked just a little bit.
Yeah, things change. I think that's all I have for now. If I have any others, I'll send them to you, Dr. Yearwood, because I've got the audit handy. Thank you.
Mr. Cobbins, go ahead with your questions.
Thank you. Okay, hi. Since you're working with children and folks with disabilities or special needs, I just want to make sure that you understand that you're very special for doing that. The question that I have now is about going forward. The goal obviously is to continue to get better, 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 better. Is there a certain level that going forward that you would like to reach that would indicate that you have at least made it to that point? I just want to know what that level is, simply because the earlier question tonight came as to there were other places that are doing better, their numbers are better.
Sure.
I mean,
I don't think there's a number. I do think state growth and that comparison is
Yes.
equally as important as it is with comparable districts, especially when they maybe aren't gaining as fast. I do think that some of these districts are large districts and they were not in school during COVID, whereas smaller districts were in seat.
Yes.
And I do have to wonder if some of the smaller district growth, when you weren't in, and again, some of our district classrooms were in seat the entire time, but it certainly played a part in getting us farther quicker. So I don't know that there's definitely ever a level that we're satisfied. We always want to grow. I do think that played a factor, but.
And that's why you're so special. Thanks.
Ms. Farrell thought of another question.
This is a question regarding your guys' needs. The curriculum audit pointed out in phase 2 a recommendation to add a lead process coordinator to your department. Is that something you guys have explored or had conversations about, or maybe thinking about in future plans for your department?
Well, I think the needs change, and so we feel very good about our current compliance and process coordinators. I think where we see the need is more for either like mentor, a curriculum coordinator to support our teachers with instruction, behavior support to support our teachers with behavior. So I don't know that would necessarily be our highest need right now. I would look at it from those other aspects of where we need to help support our teachers with that retention and their development. That's where really I would, or behavior. That's where, and obviously both of those are going to help support teachers. That's really where my focus would be.
Okay.
All right, I want to thank you both for coming and for putting together all this information. It was a very in-depth presentation. It was something that we have not gotten before, and it was very eye-opening to see how big the department is, how many people, how many students you serve, how many people you employ, and all the different multifaceted things that you have to oversee just on the daily. And so thank you for coming to share that with us.
Thank you for the time. We appreciate it.
Of course. All right, we will now move to the consent agenda. Is there a motion? Well, first of all, does anyone need to remove something from the consent agenda? April?
Um, 8E, 8H, and I, and Q. So that's the Bridges Pilot Workshop, Debbie Dillard Associate Consulting Agreement, and Literacy Consultant Agreement. I'm sorry, 5.
Yeah.
8E, 5,
5.
H, I, and Q. Noelle was supposed to correct me because she already knew.
8E, 5, H, I, and Q.
Yes, please.
Okay. And then, Mr. Lyman, you had one too?
It is 8E13G, the Debt Collection Services Agreement.
Okay. Are there any others? Mr. Harper?
9A.
9A.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Yes. Yeah, the consent agenda.
8E, 9A. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda minus items 8E, 5H, 5I, and 5Q, 8E, 9A, and 8E, 13G?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, is there a motion to approve item 8E, 5H? The
Bridges pilot workshops.
Bridges Pilot
contract.
Workshops.
So
contract.
moved.
Second? All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Is there-
Oh, hold on, sorry, go ahead and have, I said second. I was giving it, not asking for one. And then, is there any discussion?
Yeah, I have a question. This is, so I know there's a contract right before that that's related to review of the math curriculum. This has to do with a workshop that's being held on July 16th. And my question is, I'm assuming this is for teachers that will be at the workshop. And are they being paid for this outside their contract time?
Okay. This is all curriculum.
Any teachers that come in off contract time are paid through special payroll, and so they would be paid at it's a professional development session, so they would be paid at the professional development hourly special payroll rate for attending that session.
And they're aware of that and they just submit something for that?
I
Okay.
assume so.
That is my, Dr. Yearwood and board, that is my same question for 8E, 5I, and Q, because those had to do with PD happening during the summer when teachers aren't, I'm assuming they're mostly for teachers that are not currently on contract.
And those
so-
curriculum coordinators bill both professional development pay and curriculum development pay for teachers that do various work throughout those departments throughout the summer.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and, do you want to approve those three together?
That is fine,
Okay,
because
since the
it's the
question was
same
similar.
question for all of them.
All right, so amended motion
Do we-
to approve items 8E, 5H, I, and Q.
Yes.
Is there a motion to amend that?
I move to amend.
We'll just do a friendly amendment. So there's a motion, yeah.
President Waters, as the original motioner, I can accept that as just a friendly amendment, and we don't have to vote on the amendment itself. If you're
Okay.
okay with that and no one objects.
Okay, thank you. So there is a motion and a second. We are considering items 8E, 5H, I, and Q. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, those have passed. And now item 8E, going in like Dewey Decimal kind of order, 8E, 9A, which is, I believe, project construct. Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved.
So we have a motion and a second. Mr. Harper?
I had a question for the attorneys and I never got an answer, so I'm going to abstain from the voting for that.
Okay. All in favor of approving this item, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed and any abstentions?
I abstain from the.
All right, so that passes with a vote of 6-1. And then we have item 8E, 13G, the debt collection, it's actually called Debt Collection Services Agreement. Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay, a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah. So, my beef with this one is personal. It is. So I believe in everything that our nutrition services team are doing. And I think that all of our students in Columbia Public Schools deserve, a healthy breakfast and lunch. For the last 19 years, I've worked at Veterans United Home Loans, 13 years of those. I worked specifically with folks, helping them getting their credit cleaned up so that they could buy a home. It's just a struggle for me to vote to sign on with a collection agency that's going to collect student, debt for school lunches. I know that's also for bad checks and library fees and field trip fees and property damage, parking fines, technology fees, et cetera. And I understand, thank you, Ms. MacArthur, for sending the numbers, and I understand that it's a big chunk of money. that we try to get, and I believe that our nutrition services team does everything in their power to collect that. I get those text messages, I get those emails, I get those phone calls and stuff from them as well. It's just, there's something fundamentally in me that comes with looking at a credit report and seeing a collection agency collecting debt from a public school district that I'm like, this hurts my soul a little bit. But I absolutely understand, the need for it, the unfortunate need for it. So I'll be voting no on this one.
Ms. Snodgrass?
I just had a question, and I don't know if you have the answer or not, and if not, that's okay. But I know maybe last year or at a previous point when we had specifically for nutrition services a presentation and had discussed the debt collection, there is a threshold. Is that correct? Like, it's not, if someone's like -$1 or something like that, we're not handing them over to debt collection. It's kind of just rolling over to the next year, and they just the parents need to get it paid off before the next year. And so do you know off the top of your head, or could you tell us, like, where is that threshold and how are we sort of making those decisions to try to ensure that it's not going to be a burden on our families?
Yeah, sure. When Lena Phelan is our Director of Nutrition Services, and she does a nutrition services update typically in the fall. We had just started with this collection agency, but historically we've used a collection agency in the past, and so our collection rates are much higher than a normal debt collection agency, because typically once we say we're turning you over to the collection agent, it's the people that can pay, it's not the people that can't pay. And we don't turn you over if you have $1. I have children in this district and I get the calls as well. So yes, so when someone tells me I need to pay my bill, then I pay my bill. But yes, it's $50 and you get lots of reminders. You get a weekly reminder. Once you have less than $7 on your account, you start getting calls. And so you get calls, and then before you turn anything over to collection, it's above $50.
And I'd just like to add that no child goes hungry, that we will
Yes.
always provide a meal for a child, breakfast and lunch.
100%.
And if a parent has some of that debt and they need some assistance, like if it did start to accumulate, if they come to the district prior to it getting turned over to debt collection to say, like, this is the issue and what can I do to help, in terms of, like, one, maybe checking to see if they might be eligible for free and reduced lunch, but in the case that they might not be, but there might have been other circumstances, are there ways that the district can work with those families?
Yes, 100%. And many times if somebody does, and the nutrition services team will help them fill out papers to file for free and reduced lunch. And those ones that we know are usually non-collectible like that, then we usually write those off before we would ever even turn those over to collections. If we knew there was some sort of change in circumstance where someone was unable to pay, they are pretty good at reviewing the accounts and even telling them which ones would be best eligible and suited for collection before we even take that. It's not like we're talking about $5 or $500. Just this past year, we turned over $234,000, and that was in January, and we've already accumulated an additional $100,000 just in the last 6 months. So it's a big issue, and it's not a CPS issue. It's not a Boone County issue. It's a national issue, and that we've seen articles all over the nation. And so unfortunately, it's just a step that we have to take, because that's equivalent to over 5 classroom teachers. In the Nutrition Services Fund, it's not legal to pay bad debt from the Nutrition Services Fund. So that's something that has to come from the operating fund to be able to pay off that debt each year, if that's the way we chose to go.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve item 8E13G. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, Mr. Harper, I didn't see you. You said aye. Okay, so that passes with a vote of 6-1. All right, and we will, if it is okay, I would like to amend the agenda slightly to move forward item 10C, the consideration of the Battle Elementary Construction Management at Risk Maximum Price Proposal Amendment, because we have a community member in the audience that I think is waiting for that item. And may not need to stay for the rest of the meeting, if that is fine. Is there any objection to moving that item forward? Okay, then is there a motion to approve the construction management at risk guaranteed maximum price proposal amendment number 3 for Battle Elementary School?
So moved.
Second.
Do we need any discussion on this? Mr. Gooch, if you would like to say anything, this is your last chance. Last chance.
Well, this is part of this construction management process. This is not the first one that we've gone through. So this is the time in which we've received back all of the bids, and our construction manager feels very comfortable with making this declaration. This would be the maximum cost. So we've done this on the other 2 projects that are in this package, and we're ready to do that today. Any comment on bids, Alligator?
Good participation.
That's it. That's your voice.
Will you repeat what Ms. Hart said?
Here, I can do it. Great participation.
Okay, great
Continued
participation
great
in the bids.
interest and participation from bidders
good.
on all of our projects.
Very good. And Mr. Willoughby, go ahead.
I'm blanking on the URL for it, but just as a reminder to our community, all 3 of our big bond projects, so the CACC, the new Southwest Elementary, and the Battle Edition, we do have a website that our construction manager at risk has created. That was a part of that bid project conversation that we had with them. It's an awesome website. It shows you how much money has been spent currently, what money is waiting. It's a very transparent space. It has photos. It shows what's been going on.
Sure.
And so I really do encourage folks to be looking at that and going to it so that you can keep that live. And it is a lively, updated thing. It's not a stagnant website.
You're correct. Since this is my last chance, let me just say this. We, a couple years ago, started this process with construction management. We had not done it before in Columbia Public. I will tell you, and we did it at a time when we were coming out of COVID. Costs were crazy. We could not estimate. But the partners that we selected, that you approved to do this, have been stellar. And I'll be honest with you, with Susan Hart and her work with Reinhardt and SM Wilson, you all are getting a wonderful product. The community can have no better advocate, because she is treating each and every dollar, each and everything that they're looking at, as though she was somebody that was employed directly by the district, and she is not. But she has that level of concern, and she wants our community to get the best value for the dollar, and they're doing a fantastic job. Part of the projects in that, one is the Career Center, which is an extremely complicated project, and to date we've been able to continue instruction. We hope that's the same thing in the fall, that we'll continue that. But they have done really fantastic work. So just know, please, that this system is a good system for public schools. And when you have partners like Reinhardt and SM Wilson, and then you have local concern and feedback and management of that, it's a very, very good value for school districts. And school districts sometimes across the state, across the nation, we're easy targets sometimes, because we're not always building experts. But this model gives you the maximum amount of expertise. It gives you the maximum amount of collaboration in the project as it's going along, versus we'll design it, we'll build it, and then we'll charge you for all the things that popped up. And that is not happening in these projects, and we just have a great partner. So I don't want to leave and not give that shout out and to them, because they've done fantastic work. So.
All right. So we have a motion and a second to approve item 10C. All in favor, raise your hand. Oh, I'm sorry, this is an action item, so we'll have to do a roll call vote. Mike's on, please.
Yes. Okay. Mr. Willoughby?
Yes.
Mr. Cobbins?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
Ms. Snodgrass?
Yes.
Ms. Farrow?
Yes.
Mr. Lyman?
Yes.
Ms. Waters?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for being here. Going back to unfinished business, we have the third read and final approval of policy BDDH1. Is there a motion to approve that? It is the public participation.
I move that we approve BDDH1.
Second.
Final approval.
Second.
I sense some investment in this outcome. Is there anything you would like to say about the changes to this policy, Chairperson?
Yes, and April probably will want to say more. So basically, a lot of this is from MSBA Core. As you know, it's come back to the board several times. And the very last time, after some comments from the board as well as public comment, we realized that paragraph 5 under the in-person public comment was not as clear as we had intended. So I asked that it be removed back to the policy committee. The policy committee has worked on it again. And I should say this process started in October, so we've been working on it on almost a monthly basis to get this across the finish line. And we made that paragraph more specific so that the public could know exactly where they stand with regard to the public comment in the meeting. And so I believe that we should approve this in its final form.
I believe we actually started on it September, so 9 months. I hope we do not have to revisit this policy anytime soon. And hopefully our listening sessions will help the public give us feedback on not improving this policy for the next 5 years.
Mr. Willoughby.
Okay, so.
What are you going to do, Blake?
No, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate the work that y'all have done over the year. I appreciate the dialogue that we have had at the board and also the receptiveness to like questions and things like that from those of us that aren't on policy this year when these things have been brought up. And so I just want to express that thanks to you.
All right, seeing no other questions, this will be a roll call vote. Again, this is to approve the public participation at board meetings policy BDDH1. Mic's on, please.
Okay, Ms. Snodgrass?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
Mr. Cobbins?
Yes.
Mr. Willoughby?
Yes.
Ms. Farrow?
Yes.
Mr. Lyman?
Yes.
Ms. Waters?
Yes. And we have a new policy by a unanimous vote. Congratulations, Policy Committee, which has been working very hard on lots of policy revisions. Next, we will consider the Specialized Education of Missouri, the SESI High Road School Master Services Agreement. This is a second read. We had the first read at our work session on the 23rd of May. Is there a motion to approve this contract, this agreement?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion or any questions? All right. You look like you want to ask a question, but you...
I don't have a question that will impact my vote.
Okay. Thank you for using that discretion.
Thank you.
Is there... This will be a roll call vote.
Okay. Ms. Farrow?
Yes.
Mr. Cobbins?
Yes.
Mr. Willoughby?
Yes.
Ms. Snodgrass?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
Mr. Lyman?
Yes.
Ms. Waters?
Yes. All right, we have approved that agreement unanimously. Next is the consideration of the Common Assessment Platform, the Go Guardian Pair Assessment. This is also a second read. This is up for final approval. Is there a motion to approve it?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, we'll do another roll call vote.
All right. Mr. Harper?
Yes.
Mr. Willoughby?
Yes.
Ms. Farrow?
Yes.
Ms. Snodgrass?
Yes.
Mr. Cobbins?
Yes.
Mr. Lyman?
Yes.
Ms. Waters?
Yes. And then finally, under unfinished business, the consideration of the assessment plan and calendar. This is also a second read. We got a fantastic rundown of the changes from the previous year from Dr. Wilson at the work session. So this will be our final approval. Is there a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just a thank you for adding in the section on the graduation requirements from our new policy.
We're getting a thumbs up from Dr. Wilson. Great. And thank you again for explaining the differences. We'll go ahead and vote.
Okay, Mr. Willoughby?
Yes.
Ms. Farrell?
Yes.
Mr. Cobbins?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
Ms. Snodgrass?
Yes.
Mr. Lyman?
Yes.
Ms. Waters?
Yes. All right. New business. We are going to discuss and approve our 24-25 budget tonight. Is there a motion to approve such?
So moved?
Second.
Okay. Ms. MacArthur, is there anything you would like to add?
I was going to walk through a truncated version of my presentation from last week just to talk through kind of the process. Again, I cannot say enough how appreciative I am about the support I received from my team, from the board, from my superintendent, from the community. Again, this does not happen overnight. It is a long process, and we work together and collaboratively every step of the way, and we are at the end of the road tonight. And I am very excited to be here to present to you the 2024-25 budget. We do have great news this year. We've talked about this. I don't think there is anything shocking that you are going to learn tonight that we have not already talked about in the previous months. I am happy to present a balanced budget for next year based on our priorities that the board approved back in December, and started looking at back in December and approved in January at the beginning of this process that aligns with our CSIP goals. And again, it's very important that everyone knows I am not in my office building a budget by myself. This is very important that it's all tied back to our continuing school improvement plan, and that what we are spending on is based on what we approve as our priorities and our goals, and all that is linked together and as one project. And again, we start back in December and January, and we do those priorities at the beginning of the year. Then we do a zero-based budgeting process. We don't just roll forward service and supply budgets, even though that is a small percentage of our budget. We have about $55 million, which is about 20% of our overall operating budgets. That's in service and supplies. We don't just roll forward the same budgets each year. We really want our building leaders, our department leaders, our coordinators, everyone to think thoughtfully about what they truly need each year, so that they're not just rolling forward the same amount each year, that they're going through the different platforms and programs and supplies and things that they need, and making sure not only do they link to the overall building or district goals and priorities, but how do they link to their building BSIPs or building school improvement plans and department improvement plans as well, and so that they're making sure that we're reviewing those continuously, because it's not going to be an endless pot of money forever. So that is something that people are going to have to continuously review as we're looking out over the next 5 years. Also, we then look at our capital projects. Again, those are important to approve because we have a short time period when we are out of school buildings. And so as we contracted the last couple of months to make sure that we're using June, July, and August while kids are out of building, to make sure that we're using those construction, that time period as best as we can to make sure that we're getting projects complete. And then 80% of our budget salaries and benefits. So the end of our successful negotiation season with our teacher groups, and we've come to a 3-year contract. So hopefully we'll be talking about salary schedules and work calendars and all those things much earlier than April next year, so that because that's really important to our recruitment and retention process, to be able to have a set salary schedule, to be able to make those offers earlier in the year. And so we approved those in April this year. And then in May, again, we brought all the recurring additions to you guys again, a preliminary budget, and then last week with the budget hearing, and tonight with final approval of our budget here on June the 10th this year. The student enrollment, again, I always like to remind you, student enrollment does drive our revenues at the state, and so that's why we look at this chart, we peaked back in prior to the pandemic in 1920, but we have been stair-stepping. You can see since the 2020-2021 school year, we have been growing back up slightly each year until what we're today in right under 19,000 students that we have. We are a large organization, and we're continuing to grow and specialize in specific student groups as well, which we get those weighting factors for additional special education that we heard a lot about tonight. Also our English language groups and our free and reduced lunch learners, we get additional money from the state in those specialized groups in those areas. And so that will drive our state revenue for next year. And the next couple of slides are just some comparison. You heard it in our special education presentation tonight. We use the same comparison districts that are in size and demographic that are located throughout the state. A lot of them are in St. Louis and Kansas City, not more centrally located. Jefferson City is really the only one that's even close to our size in the central portion of the state, but we do use those for comparison districts just because of their size. So you can see the ADA, or average daily attendance, and how large Columbia is even compared to some of our comparison districts on that list. And then our per pupil expenditures, again, that is a number that is collected by our Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. The blue line shows the average of all those schools that are above the blue line of $13,082. We are almost $1,000 higher than that at $13,898. So we are above our comparison districts with our per pupil expenditures. And so we talk a lot about salaries and stuff, but our salaries are lower, but our expenditures are higher. That means that we have more people, a lot more supports than a lot of our districts have. And then our tax levy and our assessed valuation, again, all that relates directly to the fact that we are very highly locally funded and supported by our community, and that really drives a lot of what we are able to do with our budget because we are so highly supported by our local community. And then the average class size and teacher-student ratios are, again, just another data point collected by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. You can see our student-teacher ratio and our average class size, again, are both below the average for all of our comparison districts. Again, we don't see normally 13 or 16 in a class. A lot of those, we just reminder, those are just because they collect all of the certified personnel, and also things like our special education classrooms are a lot smaller than our regular. A lot of those specialized classrooms that Elise and Leanna presented on earlier tonight are a lot smaller than our regular core classrooms. And so those all those lead to like how they average out some of those class sizes. But again, it's just to show that we are below our comparison districts, and that just again shows how many supports that we have in our schools. And then the last couple months we have led up to this point, again, salaries and benefits, 80% of our budget. We've talked about each one of our individual recurring additions to our budget over the last couple of months. And so this is just a summary slide, again, to show you, again, right under or over 2,800 FTE going into the 24-25 budget in our operating fund. You can see that the cost to step everyone, those are just improvements just to move down on the salary schedules to step everyone each year is over $3 million. And then the additional cost of salary schedule improvements to the schedules is an additional $8.7 million with benefits. And so those two lines together are over $12 million just to step everyone in for additional improvements to salary schedules. And so it's really important to know that's driving a lot of our additional recurring costs, plus our additional FTE additions of 2.7 million. And so total cost of salary plus benefits, and you'll see this when we look at our projected actual compared to what our 24-25 budget is, that is an additional $16.7 million in salaries and benefits this year next year compared to the current year. Again, just a reminder, the board does continue 100% pay all of our medical, dental, and life insurance for all of our full-time employees, and those rates are locked in. We're in they're on a calendar year basis. We're in year 2. The calendar year 2024 is year 2 of a 3-year contract that we have with our providers, and so we do not expect an additional change through the 24-25 fiscal year for benefits. And fixed costs, we talked a little bit about the service and supply line. So there's not a lot of flexibility in our service and supply line. The 55 million total service and supply, you can see on this when we're talking about fixed costs, almost 25 million of that is fixed cost. So when you get into the amount that's really like flexible, you're getting down to about the $30 million range. And so that's really a small percentage of our overall budget when we're pushing $300 million for our overall budget. But you can see about in the pretty conservative increase in fixed costs for next year as we have the final renewal for our STA contract at a 2% renewal rate there for student transportation, again, our largest fixed cost line. And so our total increase for fixed costs is right under $1 million. One-time additions for 24 and 25, again, we talk a lot about our capital projects, and we were just talking our last guaranteed maximum price for our 3rd big bond project. We have the Columbia Area Career Center project that is going to be finalized within the next year, and so we have to have our furniture, fixtures, and equipment that go into that building, and so we have a $250,000 one-time addition in the next year's budget. The largest one-time addition. And then again, you see the new elementary and Battle School elementaries one-time additions for the 25-26 budget. Again, the largest of those one-time costs that are related to our capital projects. And we also approved in our consent agenda tonight to start looking at some of the curriculum adoption for the 25-26 year. And so we're piloting those programs. And so that has to do with our elementary math curriculum adoption that will happen the following year as well. And so we'll have a one-time add again in the 25-26 school year for that. So what does that mean? So that brings us here, the current 23-24 projected actual expenditures that we see to date. Again, you can see the charts over there on the right-hand side of the screen break down the sources of our revenue and expenditures, and then the actual numbers you can see on the left-hand side of your screen. Again, 64% of our operating budget comes from local sources, the large majority of that from our property taxes, and then our Prop C, our local sales tax money. And then state is 29% at right over 80 million. And so total revenues for the current year are right over $279 million. And then the breakdown of the expenditures, again, 268.5 million. And so we do have a large surplus. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone for the current year. We've talked about our property taxes coming in over what we expected. Our Prop C money is coming in over expected. And so those additional revenues going into surplus, which is going to be our springboard for the next year for our fund balance and for some of the additional improvements that we're able to give for the 24-25 operating budget. And so these are the summary of the changes of the differences between the current actual and the next year's budget. Again, local revenue, $6.7 million increase. About 4 million of that it has to do with our property taxes, and the other 2.5 million has to do with our Prop C. And so those two line items together make up the large majority of that difference between local revenue for the current year and next year. And then our state revenue, we've spent the last couple months monitoring the state budget and looking at the approval there. We have almost $9.5 million increase in our foundation formula funds coming out of the state, and that additional revenue going in at the state revenue, and then an additional $500,000 in transportation. That makes up that $10 million line there, an increase in state. And then again, the decrease in federal revenue as we're using up the remaining stimulus funding going into next year. So a total revenue increase, again, operating funds only $13.9 million. And then our salaries and benefits, you can see salary increase of 13.3 million and then benefit increase of 2.7 million to get us to that $16 million number that we saw for our increases for salaries and benefits and recurring additions. And then a service and supply increase of 2.6 million, again, largely due to our fixed costs and one-time additions. And then that final line down here on the screen is our transfers out number, again, 5.6 million, which is higher than we've seen in previous years due to that transfer, 2.6 million that we're transferring to our nutrition services fund because of the deficit that we're going to see in that fund also, and we're also transferring over to the capital projects fund for those devices that we are replacing on our refreshment cycle. It's staff devices next year, which are now over $1,000. And so then the numbers, the numbers for our 24-25 preliminary proposed budget, again, $186 million in local revenue. That local revenue is 63% of the total budget. The state number is over 90 million for our 24-25 budget. You can see that state percentage was 29% in the current year and is increasing to 31%. So that additional $10 million in state revenue is boosting up that percentage there. And then our federal, again, is decreasing as some of those stimulus lines are drying up for next year. And so federal is decreasing to 5%. And so you can see the total right under $293 million in operating revenue for next year. And then our expenditures down there on the bottom half of our screen, again, our salaries and benefits right under 80%, service and supply then is right around 20%. And again, that transfer out line is a little bit larger than we've seen in the past because of those things that we talked about on the last slide. And so basically a break-even year we're expecting for next year, revenue over expenditures of $177,000. And then our preliminary budget, this is just a different breakdown of those same numbers. Again, the same expenditures, just broken down in a different way. Our salaries and benefits are object level. What we use this for, this is broken down in function and how we use it. And so this slide just shows if you add up those numbers, over 50% of our operating budget is used for instruction and pupil supports. And then finally, how does that affect, again, we don't just look at the current year budget, but we look long-term and how our spending and how our revenue projections are going to affect us in the long term in the 5-year model. And so that, again, is directly related to our CSIP goal number 1, and to make sure that we have 3 months of fund balance on hand and our long-range planning. And so you can see that our 24-25 budget and beyond meets that goal. And quickly, just we'll run through our other special funds, our debt service fund. You can, again, debt service is a separate fund that's legally required to be separated by the state just to repay our principal and interest payment on our general obligation bonds. And you can see our total expenditures are right over $30 million in debt service. And the large majority of the revenue that goes into this also comes from our local property tax, and our tax levy for our debt service fund is 0.9719. And in our long range capital improvements plan remains at, we're able to meet our principal and interest payments on our debt throughout our long-range plan without increasing any kind of property tax for debt service. And for capital projects, again, you can see this year the large other line item includes our $40 million in general obligation bonds that we issued back in March, and then a large federal revenue line for our ESSER 3 money that we're using for our HVAC projects. And so those are the revenues for the current year for capital projects. You can see the revenues for next year look much different. Obviously, no, we're not planning to issue any bonds next year. We're $4 million in remaining federal money as we finish up those HVAC projects this summer, and then the large line for the other line for our transfers in from our operating fund. And so you can see, and then a reminder that we do budget for the full amount of our projects, even though some of those projects might roll forward from year to year, to make sure as soon as we have a contracted, we have a liability. So we want to make sure that we're not overspending our bond funds, and so that we have we do budget for the full amount of the projects, even though they may roll forward to a future year. And so we don't have a lot of flexibility above the bond projects, bond money that we have already issued. And so we'll start talking about a no bond authorization and bond issue for the 2026, spring of 2026. And then nutrition services, again, we talked a little bit about this already tonight. You can see that as we put additional money into our salaries and benefits, that also affects our salaries and benefits for our nutrition services workers, which they have their own salary schedule and are some of our lowest paid employees. So it's really important that we continue to recruit and retain those employees as well. And so we've made a commitment to continue to fund the nutrition services fund. We had additional fund balance coming into the current year because there was some stimulus money that we had received in prior years. But at the end of the current 23-24 school year, we're going to be basically at a break even in the nutrition services fund. And so that's why we're going to have to transfer the additional $2 million into the nutrition services fund from our operating fund for next year to be able to break even. And then quickly, the last three slides have to do with our three self-insured funds. We have separate self-insured funds for our medical fund, our dental fund, and our workers' compensation. And all three of those funds continue to run healthy. Our fund balance, again, our medical fund, we have not had to raise insurance rates since pre-pandemic, which is pretty unheard of. So that we're continuing to run in our medical fund. Again, we have about a $7 million balance in our medical fund. It's important, and we all know, like when we go to the doctors, like we have the billing doesn't always happen overnight, so we always do have to have some fund balance on hand if large claims come in from what we called incurred but not reported claims at the end of the year. But we still have a pretty about a three months fund balance in our medical fund as well, and continuing to pretty much break even in that fund as well. And then the dental fund, again, has had a surplus. We're expecting a small surplus at the end of the current year and we've even made some improvements to our plan design for our dental services fund and continue to run in the surplus. And so we have about expecting right under a $2 million fund balance for our dental services self-insured fund for next year. And then the final slide is our workers' compensation fund, and this is something that we've talked about the last couple of years that continues to run well with a great mod rating, and we have able to, once we get over $3 million, this may be a way that we can have a one-time savings to our operating fund, because again, the plan payments that go into that fund are transferred over from our operating fund. And so if we have about a 2 years fund balance on hand, we can suppress payments for a year and still feel comfortable with where we're at and able to meet those payments in that fund. And so for 25-26, we may start talking about how we can do that again. And you can see the revenues are about $1.8 million, and so that would be a $1.8 million savings to our operating fund if we were able to suppress those payments for 1 year. So that's something we'll start talking about again next year at this time. But that's all I had. I'm willing to take any questions. Again, I'm sure you guys all had some great reading of our budget book that you guys got to take home over the weekend, all 478 pages. And so just a reminder to you guys tonight, basically your job is to approve numbers and total. We go way above and beyond anything that's legally required for you guys to have. A lot of that information in there is just the same numbers sliced and diced in different ways. A lot of supplementary information. The informational section, I think, is one of the largest sections in the book. It's all just additional data that helps to be as transparent as possible and gives you additional data points to review. But any questions or suggestions or edits, I'm willing to take those as well. And after tonight, if you we'll finish all of our editorial and fixing all of our typos, and you'll have the final document. We like to get done by the end of June, and then you'll have your pretty colored binder for next year by your July meeting for the final document. And then we submit again our document for the Meritorious Budget Award, which is goes through then a rigorous review by our friends at the Association of School Business Officials, and we'll get those results in the fall.
Any questions? There were questions at the budget hearing. and
Yes.
So the information is substantially similar. So I would assume we are ready to vote. So this is a roll call vote to approve the 24-25 budget.
Right. Mr. Cobbins?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
Ms. Snodgrass?
Yes.
Mr. Willoughby?
Yes.
Ms. Farrell?
Yes.
Mr. Lyman?
Yes.
Ms. Waters?
Yes. All right. The next item under new business is the consideration of the budget amendments for the current budget year. Those were attached to the agenda. Did anyone have any specific questions about those amendments, transfers? All right, so we need a motion to approve.
I would
those
just make a
budget
general
amendments.
comment on this. A lot of the, we're statutorily, when the auditors come, they look to make sure that we're not over budget. And so some of them were very close, which is good, but I also didn't want to make sure that we didn't get any findings for being over budget, hence the transfers for $5,000 in debt service and $10,000. But that's a good news, but that is something that the auditors look at when we get here. So I appreciate you letting me amend those budgets to make sure we're in compliance.
Of course. We're happy to amend them. Yes. Approve the amendments. But we do need a motion to do those. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, and this will be a roll call vote.
Mr. Willoughby?
Yes.
Ms. Farrell?
Yes.
Mr. Cobbins?
Yes.
Ms. Snodgrass?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
Mr. Lyman?
Yes.
Ms. Waters?
Yes. All right, and then finally, we have the consideration of construction agreements, engagements, and change orders. Is there a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? All right, last roll call vote.
Ms. Snodgrass?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
Mr. Willoughby?
Yes.
Ms. Farrell?
Yes.
Mr. Cobbins?
Yes.
Mr. Lyman?
Yes.
Ms. Waters?
Yes. All right. Updates on board member activities, go ahead. Do you want to talk about that? Yeah. So I know Ms. Snodgrass is on the radio tomorrow morning with Dr. Yearwood at 8:30 on KFRU.
Next Tuesday, 9 a.m., the Career Center, we're doing the groundbreaking ceremony. Although it looks like they've been breaking the building apart when I drive by it, but yeah, get the official groundbreaking going. 9 a.m. at the Career Center.
Super. Anything else?
Yes, I think it's more of a question. July's board meeting, July's regular board meeting, is it here?
No.
It is at Boone Electric on Range Line, yes, which is where we had our summer meetings last year. So those will also they'll be recorded and live streamed if, hopefully, that is the intent. They were able to accomplish that last year, so.
And
yes,
does
thank you.
those meetings start a little bit earlier?
5:30?
That's correct.
Is it 5:30? So
Okay,
we'll
I
do-
just wanted to make sure the
Yes,
public was
and just
aware.
for the board, that meeting is the regular session first, and then the executive session following. So we start at 5:30.
That's right.
Mr. Willoughby.
Mr. Gooch, you're going to hate me, but I just wanted to say thank you very much for your service to this district. It has been an honor and a privilege to work with you and learn from you. I also just want to highlight the fact that through your work with the Career Center and through your time here and your position as COO and all the buildings that we have built throughout that, the impact that your work will have on this district is going to be generational, because these will be buildings that so many kids are going to be entering. This is going to be programs that so many kids are going to be engaging in. And I just want to thank you for your dedication and your service for helping outline all these things for us, helping see all these things through, and just making sure that we have these high quality facilities and programs at the Career Center.
Can I briefly make a statement? I promise, I know it's a long night, and you know me.
It's before 9. We're not going to know what to do with ourselves.
I just want to thank you. This is wrapping up 13 years here in Columbia, 26 years in public ed. I have nothing. I've rehearsed some mic drop speeches, but none of those are going to happen tonight. But in all honesty, I am very, very grateful and very, very thankful to have been able to be here for 13 years. It has afforded me personally, professionally, opportunities that I would have not gotten anyplace else in public education. I'm very thankful of that. I'm thankful for the thing that impressed me the most when I came here 13 years ago was the professionalism and the high standards in which the people working in this district had. I just encourage you to continue to expect that. That's so important. But I am truly blessed, and I'm humbled sometimes when I think about the opportunity that I had here. And I can't say that every day I did a fantastic job, but I can say I think every day I gave the best I could that day. And all of us have days that our best isn't really good. So I ask your forgiveness for that. But I hold this district in high esteem, and I am truly extremely thankful for this opportunity and the things that I've gotten to do and the things that I've gotten to see happen for students. So thank you. June 28th is the official date. So.
Thanks, Randy. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor, raise, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
And we're adjourned.